Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are completing our review and coverage of Star Trek Picard Season 3 with a very, very special guest, showrunner Terry Matalas. Hey, Terry, how are you?
Hi. I'm thrilled to be here, guys.
We're thrilled to have you here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Cirroc, I only see you at parties these days, crazy parties.
Me too.
Where we're like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, there's worse places to meet each other.
There are worse places to be, yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely ran into you a few times at some good parties. And every time it's been great conversation. It lets me know, on a personal level, meeting you, knowing how much you are passionate about Star Trek. For the fans out there that, don't know, the people that are making these shows really love the shows, are knowledgeable about it. And Terry, you've got a history that ties back to the legacy of, the original legacy Star Trek, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And I think that vision and that experience and that connection that you have with it carried on into the quality of the work that we saw on Picard. I want to thank you for giving us as fans, what we wanted the most, which is bringing the band back together again. Tell us a little bit about walk us through the process of saying, I'm going to do this big thing about bringing the original Next Generation guys back together, and 30 something years later, where the fans probably thought, this wasn't going to happen again. What was the challenges there?
Well, it's sort of the cherry on top of a long Star Trek journey. Because out of college, I interned in post-production when Deep Space Nine and Voyager were on the air. It was literally I moved from New Jersey to LA, and suddenly I was on the Paramount lot where they were making 2 Star Trek shows, which is insane. I mean, you remember how much of that lot was occupied by Star Trek? Like, it was crazy. Like with Voyager and Deep Space Nine right across from each other. And then my first job out of college, once that internship was over, was to be a PA for Voyager. And so I remember, which also meant if you're a PA for Voyager, you're also a PA for Deep Space Nine, really. Like, you're helping, but we helped out both shows. So there's many times I was walking around that promenade where you were there. And it was, that set was extraordinary. Just doing and handling a lot of Deep Space Nine stuff. So that was that. And then at the time they were making, I remember when they made Insurrection and they made Nemesis. And as someone who was like the biggest Star Trek First Contact Next Gen fan in the world, like, I always wanted more of them, but never really felt like they got there after First Contact. I think there's a lot of great things in those other 2 movies, but it never really, nothing really felt like a goodbye to them or a send off or a sense of finality to them. And so when they announced this show, Picard, I remember I went and met, and they're like, "Oh, we're doing Star Trek Picard." I was like, "Oh my God, I want to do that so bad." And they're like, "Oh, we've got people." And I was like, "Oh man." And then I was called in for season 2 to work with Akiva Goldsman on season 2. And then they were like, "We're going to hand off the show to you in season 3. Look, right when I got in from season 2, I was like, all right, let's bring them all back. Let's do this, blah, blah, blah. And then they said, no, they were like, we're never going to do that. But along the way, I think Patrick warmed up to the idea that the more his friends came back to the show, and Jonathan and Marina came back, and Delancey came back, and Whoopi came back. Those days on sets were so warm and so happy for him that I think he started to say, by the end, we got to have everybody. And then it came time for me, and I said, let's do it. Let's make this the goodbye. Let's make this the final. Like the poster behind you, Ryan. For me, it was like I wanted a Drew Struzan like movie poster that felt like that's a thing you could see in the movie theater, as if this was a Star Trek movie. That's Paul Shipper, by the way, who's a brilliant artist. And so that was it. That was sort of the North Star that we follow. And Patrick was like, yeah, I think it's time. There's limited money. I mean, it was a big budget show, but it was a hair too ambitious in some ways. What I do.
Yeah.
And so that required, we'd cut certain things, and meant some of the other cast had to go away to make room for, to have, the old cast back.
Budget.
Yeah. So we couldn't do everything, but I tried. By the
Felt
end,
like you got everything. You even had Moriarty, Ro Laren back. You had the Dominion. You had Tuvok. I mean, it felt like you were able to squeeze in a ton. But you mentioned Picard season 3 having kind of a cinematic feel, and one thing I noticed was that you did not have the opening title sequence at the beginning of each episode. You instead put practically everything in the end credits. Beautiful music, amazing visuals, and that made it feel a lot more like we were watching a 1-hour movie. Can you tell us a little bit about that decision? Because that's a new decision as far as Star Trek is concerned. That's the first time we've ever seen that, I think, in all 11 series or 12.
Yeah. Well, because it was so radically different, it felt like the seasons 1 and 2 opening couldn't really work. And musically, I was changing it up as well. And just the way streaming television works is like the main titles on end are kind of becoming a streaming cable feeling. And I'd been watching a lot of that, and I was like, well, boy, I've never seen Star Trek do that. That might be really satisfying to do a version of that. But it still needed. And the other thing I felt really needed was Alexander Courage in the beginning, the bum, bum, bum. Like, I think every Star Trek has to have that for me. They don't have to, but for me, I need to hear that to signify Star Trek. So there's a lot. Honestly, I'm surprised they let me do it. I really didn't think they were going to let me be as radically different as I was, but they did, and I'm super appreciative.
It was gorgeous.
And I wanted to get the next gen font back and titles back on a screen. There was something always wonderful about putting on an episode of Deep Space Nine or TNG or any of these things and seeing a title and being like, what the hell does that mean? And then the episode. So there's that old Star Trek feeling that I wanted it to get back. It's just like that.
We felt it as the audience. I want to ask you, because you alluded to this before in the interview. You talked about when you first got on season 2 that you kind of proposed all these major changes, and they were like, "Yeah, slow down, Terry. We're not going to do that yet." Until they finally started to hand you the keys and say, "Okay, go ahead and run wild." So that makes me think, when we talk about these shows, a lot of the story arc is kind of laid out in advance. You guys have the whole season arc, and sometimes the whole series arc. Did that mean that you scrapped what you thought you were going to do for season 3 and rewrote it?
No.
Having in mind that you have all these new characters that you're going to introduce, or was it already not? Was it already up in the air?
No, when I sat down with Alex and Akiva, they said that they wanted each season to have its own story, which was really cool, because initially I proposed, well, if you have a 2-season pickup, which I had not just done, but I had done with the last 2 seasons of 12 Monkeys were picked up back to back. That was a time travel epic. So what was great about that is you could literally see, and we do it, in the beginning of season 3, because of the time travel, you actually see clips of the series finale, but you haven't gotten there yet. So there's like future versions of themselves crossing. So that's really satisfying to have that kind of runway to plan. And I did say, I was like, you could do that here. You could do a season 2 cliffhanger that is the biggest Star Trek cliffhanger of all time. But I think rightly so. Alex and Akiva were like, no, we want each one to have its own, to feel like its own chapter, to feel like its own unique thing. And so, there were a few versions of season 2. Akiva and I were in the trenches for a while because COVID happened. There was some changeovers within Paramount. We had there was a version of season 2 that was a bit more science fiction than a bit more. I don't want to say Star Trek, but I mean Star Trek in the terms of there was a lot more aliens and things involved in what was happening on back in time in Earth, and it was developed quite a bit by the time it was done. So we were in the trenches for that for a while. So by the time we got to season 3, we were pretty exhausted. And Kiva had Strange New Worlds. He had another show, Crowded Room, which is brilliant, which is on Apple right now. And he's like, "This is yours." And I'm like, "All right, I'm gonna do it." He's like, "Go for it." And by the way, with his support and because it took some convincing of Paramount. And so, but both Alex and Akiva were super supportive of that idea, and soon Patrick and the rest of the gang as well. But yeah, there was no plans. We didn't have season 3 is going to be this. I think we knew that we wanted to be back in space for sure on a starship. I think that's about it.
Wow.
There were moments when I was watching this show that I felt like I would have liked to have Jake in this episode to kind of pop up and do a moment. And those moments really started for me almost in the beginning when Picard is being interviewed by the press.
In season 1.
Season 1.
Yeah.
Season 1. Yeah.
It would have been great if it was Jake, but
yeah.
I was thinking, hey, that's a good moment for Jake. That was one idea.
Totally.
And then the other time I was thinking that same thought was when Picard is being surrounded by the cadets inside of that, while he's eating, and they kind of approach him and say, are you, tell us the stories about, yourself. And he kind of gives them the story. But in my mind, I thought Jake would have been in the background saying, yeah, well, what about Wolf 359?
Just because we've hung out before, that I've casually told you that we had many Jake conversations in the season 3 writers' room. And one of the ideas was you would cut to, because season 3 is a conspiracy. And as people like Ro Laren and our heroes are realizing that changelings have infiltrated Starfleet, and there's a moment actually where Ro Laren says, "I even tried going to the press." That was Jake Sisko, and the idea was you would cut to. We didn't have the money to do it, mostly for set reasons, but like you would cut to Jake Sisko, this journalist who's starting to put whose specialty is Starfleet because of obviously his background, and that's his focus, is realizing weird shit's going on. Things are being reported but then dismissed. Frontier Day, he's covering Frontier Day, but like there's a lot of things about it that don't make sense. And as he goes down the rabbit hole, he starts to figure out what's up. But that was like its own series. Like once we started talking about that, we were just like, yeah. And then we were like, we can't do that. So what we did actually, what I did, and when it was all over, is I pitched it as a podcast. I pitched it as Jake covers the Frontier Day disaster. And starts to fill it out, and he's actually part of rooting out the very end of it. and they were like, no, we've got some podcasts already planned. I was like, oh man, but I wanted it ready for after the season finale aired. You can immediately go to and it was Jake. It's a podcast with Jake talking, through it all. And but look, that's what's so unique about, if we ever get to do anything in this time period again, is that's really a side of Star Trek we haven't seen, which is like civilian coverage of Starfleet. Well, we've seen some of it, but it would be really interesting for the son of Sisko, and who's been through the Dominion War and everything. Like, I think he has such a unique perspective. Anyway,
it's an amazing idea. People would have loved it. They would have eaten it up. On behalf of Star Trek fans, and I know you're a huge Star Trek fan yourself, Terry, we would have eaten it up. It was a great idea. It's a bummer it didn't end up working out, but great idea.
I was listening to it. It's like you play it out like a Starfleet true crime podcast. With lots of Elkhart chirps going through it, but like, it was cool. It was cool. You know what? I'll dig up the pitch sheet and I'll send it to you because it was cool. It was I mean, not salt on the wound, but I think we could do it. I mean, even if we do it as a fan film, we should do it.
That's amazing.
I mean, but you did cover so much ground in this. You gave us also one of the best villains we've had in a long time on a series, which was Amanda Plummer's character. I thought was fantastic.
Thank you.
Want to shout out her. Also want to shout out our good friend Todd Stashwick, who you also wrote a great Captain Shaw, who was just somebody that the fans hated but loved, and it was so amazing. So you gave us a lot. You gave us Will Wheaton, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Season two.
Yeah. So you did cover so much ground, and I mean, a lot of it to me comes from the fact that you have that experience. You're almost like the Jake Sisko of the writers, in the fact that you kind of grew up in the process of it and watched all of these things happen firsthand. Or the Nog, who worked his way up to captain, from starting off as an ensign. So I think a lot of that, resonates in who you are as a person, Terry. And I'm glad that Star Trek has somebody like you that is going to be a responsible steward of it, and try to piece all of these things and make it work from the perspective of the fans, not just just writing, but also saying, hey, what would the fans want to see? And I think you gave us that a lot, especially like I said in that third season.
It's tricky, right? Because and certainly with this season, this phrase gets thrown around a lot. Is the term fan service, right? And we never approached it as fans would like to see, but we did approach it as fans as things we would like to see. You know what I mean? It's hard to because again, like I think the show's harshest criticism in season 3 is that it's nostalgia bait, or you know what I mean? But if that was the case, you could have opened the first episode of them back on the Enterprise bridge and just call it. Like, that would have been the nostalgia play. Like, I do feel that we earned that by the end. Getting everybody together on the Enterprise D was the right ship for them to be reunited on at the end, going into the last battle. Is it nostalgic? Sure. Or is it just the right end to a fucking story, guys? You know what I mean? Like, a novel usually reflects its beginning in some way, in many ways. So, but it to some, that it's a valid criticism, but again, it really comes down to taste, because there's an argument to me that there's a sort of an unromantic quality to people who are like, there shouldn't be nostalgia, and it's like, really? Like, we have anniversaries for a reason. Like, we have, There are, when you walk into someone's house, there are pictures on the wall and furniture and items of things that are part of it. So that's just part of being in the world of a human being, to reflect on the past. And by the way, if you sit with any of these actors, the first thing they're going to do is tell you a story about back in the day. The first thing they're going to do is reflect, oh, this reminds me of such and such. So there's a lot of that as well. So yeah, again, it's tricky, right? Because it is from the perspective of a fan, but it's also trying to be servicing Star Trek, I think, is probably the phrase I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. Well, Terry, usually conventional wisdom is that you don't give the fans what they think they want. Like, they think they want the couple to get together and live happily ever after, but as a writer, you keep them apart. If you give the fans what they want, you don't really have a good story. You can't put Ross and Rachel together, immediately, because that's what the fans think they want, but actually the story is better if they don't. It creates that tension. But in this case, you kind of buck that trend, because the fans do want everybody to get back together. But not just that, but they also want them to live happily ever after. Yeah. And that's something we rarely get. Yeah, and when I watched it, I was over the moon with how it ended, with all of them playing poker and just happy. No, we're happy even though Data died, or we're happy even though this.
Patrick asked me, he's like, do you think we should kill Picard? And I said, I'm like, I don't, first of all, they kind of did it in season 1, but I just don't have it in me to kill my heroes like that. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it was great. I don't like how they did it with Kirk. If you're going to do that with Kirk, I feel like he should be on the bridge of a starship going out in an incredible blaze of glory. If you're going to do it, I think there are few great hero deaths that I can stand by. Like, Tony Stark is probably the best one, because it's truly the end of this arc and so earned. And so it's hard to say that's kind of not perfect, even though I want more Tony Stark forever. But yeah, happily ever after, again, I'm sure they're all going to have trouble in their lives after and drama, but I think the fans want to see that group together, and not just as fans of those characters, but of those actors. And like the end of that poker game, when we shot it, was, I just let the camera go for like 45 minutes, and I was like, just stay in the moment and improv. So all the smiles and jokes that you see are genuinely them. It's like what it is to hang out with that cast who truly loves each other and truly, like, I see them all the time in these conventions. Rock, they love each other. Like, you go to dinner with LeVar and Brent and Frakes and Gates and Marina and Michael. They're all joking. They all know each other. They see each other all the time. And now they're like this weird extended family, and they'll bicker, but they'll joke, but they truly love to spend time together. So I wanted to get that feeling for the fans for just a couple minutes at the end, to be like, this is what it's like to hang out with your favorite cast and your favorite characters. So I hope that came across.
That did come across, and it did. And now that you mentioned that, so you just had the camera rolling, and just gave them.
Yeah, I would call things out. Like, I would be like, Worf, you're folding and you're pissed. You're really mad. And so we would do a couple, and then he would laugh, and he's like, all right, let me try this. And so he did, I fold, okay? That kind of thing. And there was a couple of lines too, I forget. There's some that didn't make it in. I think you'll see it on the Blu-ray. I think we were putting in a longer extended version of some of that footage, so you could see even more of it. But yeah, it was fun.
As fans, we would watch that entire 45 minutes. You know that, right? We would love every second of it.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Mm. And actually, we just had Melinda Snodgrass on, who is the with the creator of the poker idea. We kind of went into that discussion with her and why she chose poker, and she said she needed a game in which she can find in which data would be bluffed, and where he would have to learn the concepts of being bluffed. So, and poker was the tool for that. So I just think that, to see the bookend of the beginning of that, which we just watched not too long ago, till closing out Picard on that,
in the measure of a man.
Their theme. Yeah. I think that's just such a beautiful, arc from bookend to bookend.
Well, I appreciate that. We were hoping you would feel that way.
Terry, I wanted to ask you, because I think we're all envious of your position, not just in what you created and what you were able to do as a fan and as a professional, but also just kind of selfishly, I feel like it would have been so fun to be in your position, knowing what's going to happen and watching people's reactions week to week. Week one, Shaw, boy, what a dick. I hate him. And you get to watch, Twitter and just kind of go like, okay, well, we'll see how you feel. Just hang on. Just see what happens. Was there some extra gratification or nervousness? Were you worried, like, how are they going to feel about episode 4? What are they going to think about episode 10? Or, what kind of roller coaster ride was that?
It's overwhelming to the point that I actually had to stop looking. It was predominantly positive, but because Star Trek fans are every color of the rainbow in every way, there are extreme, baffling right-wing fans. I don't know how. And then there's the other side of the spectrum. Not everybody is going to love what you're doing. Everybody wants a little bit more of many things, and so that's hard to navigate, just because there are so many decisions that go into making stuff, and things you don't have time for, and things actors want to do, and things actors don't want to do, and things the studio doesn't want to do. So it's hard to, you're not going to please everybody, which was the lesson I needed to. I mean, there were people who were just like fucking mad that we brought Data back. And I'm like, sure, I understand that. I wouldn't want to see a next gen reunion without Data, but to each their own. So it was gratifying for the most part, but after a while you get, even like our twist at the end that it was a part of the Borg was telecast. Like, it's the first thing you see in the season is a little bit about the Borg, and it feels like it's pretty in the DNA of the season with Wolf 359. But there were people who were betting it was Pa Wraiths from Deep Space Nine, and like, they were betting the farm. And I'm like, that's the problem with a mystery approach, is there will be fans who will have a version in their head that they want to see and are depending on it. And then when they don't get it, they really don't like it. So, you watch that too. And that hurts, because you're like, oh yeah, I don't know how that would have worked for this show. It would have been great for a Deep Space Nine reunion, but like, I don't know for Next Gen if that felt like the right villain to do,
Did you feel like you tied all and closed all the storylines that you wanted to? Because there was like a couple of things that left me kind of wanting a little bit more, waiting almost for the full season to start. And I'll give you an example of what I felt those things were. The Jack Crusher storyline, I felt like it was almost left open for more, as opposed to there was resolve to it. I also would have liked a little bit more about Amanda Plummer's character's underlord boss that she was answering to, that wicked thing that she cut off her arm.
That was the Borg Queen that she was talking too. And in retrospect, we should have made that clearer. I think we spelled it out in a scene in the finale, and we were like, Picard walks past a table in which you realize that was the Borg Queen's way of communicating to the subspace thing too. And if you look at the face, it's very much the Borg Queen's mutated face with things going to the eye. But we weren't super clear about it. But yes, Jack Crusher for sure. I want to do 7 more seasons of that character. And how the changelings, the ship, the Shrike itself, like that, is that a changeling ship? Is that another alien species ship that they stole and used? Like, we had many ideas about that as well. That would have been fantastic to get into.
Well, everybody, did you hear that? He said he'd like to do 7 more seasons of Jack Crusher. I'm sure everybody caught that, and they're like, well, it's not a closed door as far as we know. So hopefully something like that will happen. We're all rooting for Legacy or whatever it may be called to happen. But now that the door is pretty much closed on Picard, it seems, permanently until something else opens up, and season 3 is done. Looking back a few months later after it's all said and done, Terry, is there a moment or an aspect that you're most proud of? Was it a character, a storyline, a scene?
Yeah, there is. So I directed the finale, and the moment, there's a moment in the conclusion where the Enterprise is in the Borg cube. They can't locate their friends on the cube that's about to explode. And it looks like it's going to be a goodbye. Jack has just been freed from the collective with his father. It was a moment I visualized, which was that the Enterprise would come swooping in above Picard and Jack looking up at the Enterprise. It was an image I wanted for months and months. I even drew it on a dry erase board in the writer's room. And I was like, here's a visual effect shot we will never be able to accomplish, but I want to do it. Because it feels like a big movie shot. And emotionally, what I like the most about it is it's Deanna Troi is able to find them because of her emotional and psychic connection to her husband, who at that moment is feeling so much about what they've been through and the loss of their son that she can't help but know exactly where they are because of this psychic connection, which is kind of a payoff to some early stuff in Next Gen. And those moments coming together, working with the score and doing this key change right as the Enterprise, like when I see it, I get it. Also sort of like the idea of Deanna finding them and running to the front of the ship to get the ship there is sort of this weird meta payoff to her. Like, for years, she hasn't had enough to do. They accuse her of crashing the ship. Well, it's nonsense. It just felt, and it's an incredible moment for Troi. Anyway, I'm really proud of that moment, that shot, that music, that feeling of like, and when we screened it in the IMAX theater, it was the cheers were everything that I had hoped it would be. And so, yeah, I'm pretty proud of that.
It's gorgeous. Yeah.
What's a favorite episode of yours of Next Generation? What would you put up there in one of your top episodes?
I'm not going to say anything revolutionary. It's best of both worlds, 1 and 2. It's Inner Light. I mean, there was a time every time I got a new girlfriend, I would show her Inner Light to be like, here's what Star Trek really is. To some level of success in that department. Again, all good things. The whole Moriarty arc again was one of my favorites as a kid. The idea, the idea of this AI hologram coming alive, and how they trick them and get them back into the mini holiday. Like, I love. There's too many to mention, but those are the ones that I hold on to for sure.
You know, the episode I used to introduce a friend or a girlfriend is Cause and Effect. And
Cause and Effect, Brandon's episode, yeah.
Because it's such a great standalone episode. You don't need to know anything really about Star Trek. You get it. You understand what's going on. And Inner Light, secondarily, for them to say, wow, I didn't realize there was so much depth and emotion involved in Star Trek. But those are excellent ones. Well,
yeah,
Terry.
I worked with, I was Brandon's assistant for many, many years. And that's Brandon's baby, that episode, Cause and Effect, And so, and many people would come into his office, even when we worked on the show 24 after we worked on a show, Terra Nova. He gave me my first writing job. But people would come in, new writers would come in and Cause and Effect.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So stay tuned for that, Cirroc.
Yeah, Brandon on.
Yeah.
I'd love to come on.
Oh,
yeah. I haven't seen Cause and Effect yet. I'm still on season 2, episode 9 right now.
That's great.
So I'm just soaking it all up. It's been a fun ride to watch these old episodes and kind of learn all the characters for the first time. So, which is interesting because I have watched Picard before I watched The Next Generation. I almost did it in reverse order.
Yeah, it is reverse. Yeah.
So I've watched all of Picard, and I'm only on season 2 of Next Generation. So I'm starting to see where the things that you pulled from.
Yeah. Poker, Moriarty.
Yeah, those things are becoming obvious to me. Let me ask you just really quickly before you leave. Walter was one of the guest stars in the show, and it was just great to have original cast member on the latest show, just to cover the span of how long this thing has been going on. And can you just talk a little bit about having Walter on as a guest in Picard?
And before you do, I just want to say that Walter keeps saying what a great time he had with you and Todd Stashwick. He was very happy about it. He still remembers it and talks about it fondly.
When he came to watch the finale, it was. I mean, how awesome is that?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, as a fan, from a fan perspective, to write and direct the finale of that magnitude, and then to have him be a part of it, then to have him come over to Todd's house and sit with us and eat popcorn and watch it and talk through it was like, and he's telling many stories. Some we can repeat, some we can't. And it was just an honor in every way, and such a gentleman. And I liked, I wish it was on camera. We ran out of time. I couldn't even dare try it with the schedule of that finale. But doing it, even audio, is satisfying, because it's kind of like, is it not? Oh my God, it is. It's that feeling. And I'm just thrilled that he did it for us, and that we were able to get some original series DNA at the end there.
Yeah.
Makes it feel like Star Trek. Yeah.
That was special. That was very special. Definitely loved that. Love the original DNA kind of infused on there, and kind of, once again, we talk about like this book ending idea. It's like it's bringing it from way back here and now bringing it over here, and we see this time that's elapsed. And I enjoyed also seeing the characters aged. I like seeing the Grey Worf. I like seeing Riker, as a distinguished man now, and not so horny as he was before. So I'd like to see the maturity in everybody. It's part of life. We all watch our parents grow up. We all watch ourselves age. And I felt like this is real. It's like, it's not trying to make them look like they did a long time ago. This is how they look now.
Yeah, and it was interesting. It's also scary, right? To bring back legacy characters, because eventually they're going to make a decision, or have made a decision in the last 20 years that fans don't agree with. One of them being like, would Beverly ever keep a son away from Jean-Luc Picard? And we had to rationalize, go back and be like, no, it actually makes a lot of sense. But to do it with them, like we did every moment of that with Gates, and every moment of that with Patrick. Every one of those actors had a say in what had happened to these characters, because if it didn't ring true for them, who had been living with these characters for that long, then it wasn't. I don't want to do that. So that collaboration was extraordinary, and something I guess they were not used to with Star Trek back in the day, was to be like, hey, let's come in the writer's room and talk about this. And
there was a separation there before.
What's working for you? What's not working? How do we, how do we fix it? And that was great. And they always made it better. Always made it better. They'd always be like, I really should say this, or I really, and sometimes you'd be like, oh, absolutely. I don't know why we didn't think of that to begin with. And so, but yeah, I think I love that. I love Age. I think they've never been better. I think they brought a gravitas to, Frakes and LeVar. I want to watch LeVar play the president of the United States. Make him. I want to see the president of the Federation. You know what I mean? He's so. He's honoring what came before, but also playing a father now. In ways, and his concerns, and it's just so satisfying.
Now, what LeVar didn't have the visor on in this last, was that a decision that you guys came together on?
Well, he lost that in the movies in First Contact, right? Or Generations, or
First Contact lens.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was Generations.
Ocular implants. Yeah.
Okay.
So and look, he still had to put those contact lenses in, which are not comfortable. And I didn't think he was going to do that, but he was a trooper and did it.
Mm-hmm.
They look great on him. And going back to what you said about the work, I thought that we saw some of the best performances from Jonathan Frakes as an actor.
Absolutely.
In this Picard show. And I also thought that Gates McFadden had some of the best performances in her character's career. Because there were moments where you got to see the sensitivity, and you got to see that they had mastered these characters, and I felt like we got to see that on display in the way the writing and the performances were.
Yeah, again, it all came from just sitting down with them and talking about what
and having that communication. Yeah,
what they wanted to play too. Like they never, they didn't want to play. They didn't want to be doing Next Gen again. And I think and I think for some fans that's hard. That was hard, and they're like, "Fuck this!" And they're like, but they didn't want to. They weren't going to do that tone again. And so I think it's I think they're wonderful.
Absolutely,
Terry. Can I ask you really quick? I'm sorry, I know we got to go, but I got.
No, we're good. We're good.
We've got a million questions.
I wanted to ask you about writing and directing. I don't know if we've ever had anybody on that's written and then directed. We've had actor directors, we've had other kinds of directors, but never, I don't think, to my knowledge, a person who writes and directs. And can you just give me a little bit of insight into that world and balancing those two responsibilities on the show?
Yeah, look, I had a lot of help. The good news is that I had a team of extraordinary writers that were fantastic, and so in no way was that entirely me or entirely anybody, because we were all in it together. So that helps writing that finale with scene work and all and lines of dialogue, and the last line of the series is not even mine, it's Cindy Appel's, because we were like, we need a great last. How do you beat in the poker game sky's the limit. That's one of the great last lines of any finale. So you need everybody. And as far as directing goes, I had an extraordinary DP with John Joffin and my friend Jonathan Frakes, who has directed countless hours, including one of my favorite Star Trek feature films. And he just liked to hang out. He's like, well, I just want to sit by you and hang out. So when he wasn't playing Riker, he was next to me and I could be like, I think I'm going to go here and here. And he'd be like, that's great, blah, blah, or you should go again, So I had that support as well. So, so that really helped. Having said that, I don't recommend it if you're doing it at the end of a series and you were exhausted as I was. It was 20-hour days, eating dinner at midnight, being up at 6 a.m. Like it was the most unhealthiest I've ever been as a human. but we only had one shot at it. And I knew it was going to take a toll, but hopefully it would be worth it for everybody at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's a good thing to have, Jonathan Frakes, who I
really is.
Yeah, I told Jonathan this last time in Vegas. I believe that if you add up the totality of the work he's done, he is the best director for the Star Trek franchise.
First contact, man.
I don't think it's really much competition in that department for him. As many series as he's spanned and the work that he's put in. So.
Yeah,
having him, kind of, just in your corner is like a priceless kind of asset.
He's got great taste, and he's also just a fountain of positive energy. When we all know how hard that is, Again, we made seasons 2 and 3 back to back. So by the time we were at the end, walking around a Borg cube, everyone wanted to die. Like that's 20 episodes. That's like a broadcast, but each one of these is a feature film. But Frakes can come into the set in the morning and go red alert, and you're just in and you're laughing. He knows everybody by name and he's just been an incredible supporter and friend. So he literally called me this morning, and I descended to voicemail to talk to you guys. We
red alert.
Yeah, that was pretty good, both of you. That was pretty good. Good Rikers. Well, when you call Jonathan back, just tell him that we said hello, of course. If you call him back, I'm not trying to be presumptuous, but I think you might. But Terry, this has been so much fun. It's really been cool. We've been talking about you for months and months and even years. So it's great
I gotta go back and watch. I gotta go see that.
Don't watch episode 4 though. So I'm just kidding. No, they're all great, I'm sure. But we really appreciate you taking the time, Terry. This has been fantastic. We appreciate everything that you've done for the Star Trek community, for the fans, for taking these chances and big swings. And it really worked out so well. I'm sure you've had many, many thanks in the past. But really, it's good that you're receiving these and that you can hang your hat on it and that you can look back and be proud of what you've done, because we sure are. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, I appreciate that. You're both very, very kind.
We love the show. Here's my notes from the first episode.
Look at that.
We had that piece of art in the background, and I really like that ship painting that you had in the background in that.
But, you even put your signature under the Enterprise right there. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I put my signature as if I drew it, like as if it was my painting. But but there you are.
I want, I want that. Bring it to the next convention so I can take a picture of that. I want that.
Yeah, I'm going to get you this, and we'll switch notes. I'll get you one of these, and you get me that pitch for that podcast, and we'll be straight.
We'll call it even.
All right, we're in.
We'll call it even.
Yeah. Everybody at home.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Make sure you're rooting for Legacy. If and when that happens, make sure you're rooting for the Jake Sisko podcast that's definitely, probably, hopefully going to happen. And
now I'm going to get in trouble. I shouldn't have brought that up. I'm not pitching. That. We don't need to do that. But
No.
Hopefully we will bring Jake back someday. Hopefully we'll get another bite at the apple here.
Well, we got to make it through this strike first and make get some resolution for everybody. But Terry, I feel like the new shows are really in good hands. We've got some really great people at the top. We haven't personally had the chance to meet Akiva or Kurtzman, or
I'm sure they'd love to come on at some point.
We haven't had that, but we can feel their impact on this, on the shows, on the franchise, and your impact, and just the amount of thought, the amount of consideration, the amount of creativity you guys are all bringing to the table. It's really doing Star Trek a real service, and we want to thank you for that. All of us, on behalf of all the fans, I want to say thank you, Terry, for giving us good product, good shows to watch.
Well,
and
I appreciate that. And again, I think a lot of that's got to go to Alex. Alex is at the head of the franchise and has managed to deliver many different flavors of Star Trek, which is right. From Lower Decks to Strange New Worlds to this season. Those are all wildly different meals, so to his credit, sees the value in all of them. And so, I think that is most of the thanks should go to Alex for that.
Thank you, Alex.
And we will. Yeah, thank you, Alex. And one day when we do get a chance to talk with him, we're going to thank him personally. But
absolutely,
since we have you here, and since we know the work that you gave us on Picard, I want to thank you because we got a lot of good moments out of it. We love to see the band get back together and do like their final tour, and that's what it really felt like to me. Like the stars that you love, the songs that you love to hear, one last performance, and let's get it, let's get that tour in. And you really gave us that tour and made the most with it. So, once again, we're looking forward to seeing whatever you're going to do going forward. Hopefully all of that stuff materializes, but we definitely know that you've got the mind, you've got the skill set, and you've worked your way up. You've earned your way to the position you're in. And we have nothing but support for you in that endeavor.
Wow. I appreciate that.
And everybody just listening in, Terry has a Ghostbusters backpack behind him, as well as Audrey.
Oh, the proton pack, sir.
The proton
Use
pack.
Use the proper terminology.
I'm so sorry. And Optimus Prime.
An unlicensed nuclear accelerator is what it is.
Ghostbusters, I still say to this day, Ghostbusters 1 is the most quotable movie ever. In my opinion,
a solid argument that is true. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us. Terry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And
Ryan.
Until next time, everybody, always remember the seventh rule.